Guys, when I was in high school, I was a scene kid. Shocker, I know. And if you're anywhere near the millennial age range like me, there is probably a high chance that you too were either an emo or scene kid in your teenhood. And if so, there is even a higher chance that you watched the cult classic Nickelodeon show, Invader Zim. Invader Zim was a show by comic artist Jonan Vasquez, who was famous in the comic scene for his comic, Johnny the Homicidal Maniac. And so naturally, seeing this work of art, Nickelodeon said, let's get this guy to make a children's show. Yeah. Great idea, Nick execs.
Just because Johnny never murks a child doesn't mean that Jonan is necessarily built for children's content.
Okay, but despite my sarcasm, it actually was a great idea because this show was iconic. So if you didn't know, the show itself is about an alien named Zim who is part of this essentially imperialist race. The problem though is that Zim is an absolute joke on his home planet of Urk. He's known as the worst, most incompetent, and absolute shortest invader on his home planet.
No invader has ever been so very small. You're very small. You're a tiny thing.
That's right, men. Even on other planets, height matters. The rulers of the Urkan Empire are literally the tallest aliens amongst the race. I mean, everyone refers to them as literally my tallest. You know what that means, right, men? You gotta get limb lengthening surgery. So, as a silly little joke, the tallest sends Zim to Earth for him to conquer. I mean, they really meant to send him into the middle of space in hopes that he would just die. But no, he lands on Earth instead and believes that this is actually the planet he is meant to conquer in the name of the Urkan Empire. However, Zim is not sent alone. He is also sent with his defective sidekick and subject of this video, Gur. Now, Gur is a type of robot that every invader has as a sidekick when they're out conquering planets. He is a robot, but I would say that he's more known for his Earth disguise look when he's disguised as this green dog. So if you've seen this dog character around and somehow wondered who that was, just know that that is Gur, a robot in disguise. Not to be confused with a Transformer, which is also another robot in disguise. Or even, I guess, the Terminator, who is another robot in disguise. What is this theme going on here? These robot units are meant to be close companions and assistants to their assigned invaders. But the thing about Gur is, like I mentioned, he's dysfunctional. Probably because he was made up of old and dysfunctional parts that the tallest found lying around. Consequently, Gur is often seen doing a bunch of silly things, like making friends with the humans they're supposed to be enslaving, dancing in the club, eating various junk foods, and generally screaming a lot. And what's funny about Gur is that he's kind of the complete opposite to Zim. Gur is spontaneous and pleasant and fun. Meanwhile, Zim is very serious, self-serving, and calculated, even if his calculations aren't always the wisest, and even if his listening skills are very subpar.
That's tag ship you're sitting in, isn't it?
Yes, it is, Zim. It fell from the—
Isn't it?
I said it was!
And honestly, they're both funny in their own right. I was definitely a Gur girly when I was a kid, but once I hit teenhood, personally for me, I actually found myself laughing more at Zim's antics. I wanted to wear my Gur onesie today to prove that I was once a true and through scene kid, but my Gur onesie is actually at my parents' place, and I didn't feel like driving 2 hours for the bit. I'm sorry, I'm not that committed to the bit. I've said this before in my previous videos. I'm sorry, I'm a lazy bitch, okay? But anyway, for the average Invader Zim fan though, I would say that Gur was the more popular choice. Yet, despite only being the deuteragonist, Gur is often the face of Invader Zim merch. When you see Zim merch out in the wild, most likely at a Hot Topic, you don't really see Zim as much as you do see Gur. Gur plushies, Gur buttons and keychains, Gur apparel, and to add, Gur has pretty much become the most iconic character within the scene community. I mean, shit, he's the mascot of the scene subreddit, for Christ's sake. But why is that? It's not like the scene kids didn't have other iconic cartoon characters that they were attached to. Looking back during my short time as a scene kid, I remember some other popular characters within the subculture were Domo, Nyan Cat, Hello Kitty, maybe even Vinyl Scratch for the later Zillennials. Yet, none of them really stood the test of time, nor served as a strong, unifying scene icon as Gur did. Like, don't get me wrong, Hello Kitty is definitely still relevant with a general audience, but when you see Hello Kitty, you don't automatically think of scene culture like how you do when you see Grr. Grr just screams scene and emo culture. And I have a few theories as to why that is. Is this an important, extremely substantiated topic in any way? Absolutely not. But hey, let a guy yap, you know? I do want to give a quick shout out to Shirogani here in my YouTube comment section for the idea. This was on my Gen Z emo resurgence video, and I already mentioned in the video how there's so much I could say about Grr, maybe a bit too much. But you know, focusing on how he blew up as an icon sounds way more focused and doable compared to whatever was going on up here. So thank you for that. To start, let's first talk about why he is relevant specifically to scene culture. And in order to do that, we have to talk about what the scene subculture consists of. Sorry if you already received this information from my previous videos, but I gotta do it again for anyone who may not have seen them. Scene is a subculture that emerged during the early 2000s, and despite some debate around the topic, I do think that it's a subculture that's marked a little more by its fashion and online culture rather than its music. You can often spot a scene kid by their side bangs and teased hair, skinny jeans, candy bracelets, and a mix of dark and neon colors. And of course, if Grr and a can of Monster are anywhere in the mix, you are probably looking at a scene kid. In addition, you can often spot scene kids online for their use of the terms rar or glomp, or the use of these emoticons, just general internet lingo that was used in the 2000s. As for the actual music that was associated with the culture, it was a lot of crunkcore and metalcore, sometimes some overlap with emo music. Many scene kids I knew also listened to screamo and pop punk. It was a lot of mixing of different genres, but if I were to generalize, I think scene kids in general just liked high energy alternative music. Scene kids were often berated by goths, punks, and metalheads for being posers. But emos tended to jive well with scene kids. There was a lot of overlap between the two groups and cultures when I was growing up in the scene, with other scene kids often describing themselves as happy emos. Hopefully all of this information kind of nails the vibe on what scene is all about. Definitely happy alternative, definitely a youth-coded thing, though some people grew up and never left the scene, and that's okay. Hell, if your hair can handle 10 plus years of teasing, by any means, slay mamas, you do you. So with that established, what is it about Grr that makes him so perfect for scene? Well, first of all, his color scheme. Grr, when he's wearing his disguise, is this neon brat green color. Remember, neon colors are a scene fashion staple, so he's already just dressed for the part, okay? He is just a great accessory to match scene fashion. Next is Grr's attitude juxtaposed with Grr's setting. Like I said, scene kids were like the happy emos. They hung around with a bunch of alternative, depressed, and nihilistic looking kids, but they were like, you know, the party kids of this sad little friend group, you know? Smashing monsters and bopping a loud synth music. And that's exactly what Grr is like. Grr is the sidekick to this dark freak in this dark show, and despite the setting, he's kind of always just vibing out and having a great time. Yet despite this, he can also have his own edgy moments when he's helping Zim to do his evil bidding, or like when the animators decide to cover him in blood for no reason. And boy, if that ain't just a general scene kid vibe, I don't know what is. Third, he's also kind of the embodiment of LOL random humor, especially with all of the random things he says in the show.
I'm gonna roll around the floor for a little bit, okay? Doo-doo. I'm naked! Chicken! I'm gonna eat you!
LOL random humor was definitely most prevalent and popular in the late 2000s, early 2010s period. A time period that, again, scene bases most of its culture on, and a time period in which scene itself was at its peak. So his essence just captures the attitude of that golden scene era. And finally, Grr is universally cute. And when I say universally cute, I mean he wasn't overtly cute like how Hello Kitty was, where only the girlier people of scene subculture kind of clung on to that mascot. And he also wasn't too niche like Domo, where only scene kids who were familiar with anime culture would know who he was. Being a character on a popular kids channel like Nickelodeon, there was such a low barrier of entry to know and like him. And these are the reasons why I believe that he is the most popular icon within the scene culture. And I think if you were ever seen or at least familiar with it, these reasons probably make a lot of sense and were probably kind of obvious. But now it's time for me to go off the deep end and talk about why I think he's a timeless icon that extends beyond subculture boundaries. Because like I said, GER has withstood the test of time. At my current workplace, I work with a lot of core Gen Z kids, a lot of 20-year-olds who thankfully don't know my real age, or at least are very nice about lying about it. And one time at work, one of my young coworkers was straight up wearing a GER beanie and GER lanyard. In the year of our Lord 2025. God bless. And you know, that coworker of mine isn't even a scene kid. If I were to describe their vibe, they're more so just generally alternative. So how does GER have so much power that his influence can seep outside of the core scene and emo demographic? And well, I think it's because GER has major appeal to a more general audience. And when I say general audience, I am including older generations and what chronically online people would consider as normies. Yes, I know, I'm sorry if you hate that term. I just didn't know how else to say it. And I believe this is because of two main reasons. The first reason is what I'd call the side character phenomenon. I don't know if you've noticed, and it really depends on how much media you've consumed and what kind of media, but side characters tend to be more popular than the main protagonists. For example, between Sam and Frodo in Lord of the Rings, I feel like people tend to like Sam more, especially because of his admirable dedication to Frodo. When comparing Carly and Sam from iCarly, Sam tended to be more popular, I think, generally because she was funnier. At least that's what I heard. I never watched iCarly. And then, when comparing side characters in Danny Phantom, I think Sam was a popular choice because she was a goth mommy. Could it be that we as a society are just attracted to people named Sam? That was a joke. Obviously, Sam from Totally Spies was the least popular one in the group. Your name means nothing. I also think that Danny was one of the few protagonists who is truthfully the most popular character in his own show. But sorry, I'm getting distracted. My point still stands though. Audiences tend to love side characters. To name a few more non-Sam examples, Puss in Boots was the talk of the town when Shrek 2 was released. And Captain Jack Sparrow, the character, was super popular amongst the Pirates of the Caribbean series. And I know Friends was more of an ensemble cast, but you know, Joey doesn't really get as much screen time or character development focus as the rest of them, so I kind of consider him a side character amongst the ensemble. But I would say that Joey was a more popular choice amongst the selection of Friends, because of how funny and drama-free he was. And we also see how this plays out when the side characters become the main characters. When Sam from iCarly got her own show, Sam and Cat, the show itself was not that well received, with many people noting that Sam just seemed like a bad person now, and that she was less funny when removed from the original iCarly cast. In addition, when Joey from Friends got his own spin-off, that show kind of crashed and burned as well. In this very detailed review, a viewer noted that Joey works way better as a comedic foil in the original show, but isn't really provided an opportunity to expand out of that in his own show. And when you're just a comedic foil in your own show, well, who is there to foil, really? Is there truly anything substantial that can come from that? I feel like the thing that makes side characters so great is that we only get to see them in doses. Obviously, the main protagonist is going to take up most of the screen time and do much more of the heavy lifting when it comes to plot or character development. As a result, you typically get two general flavors of protagonists. Either a relatively blank slate for the audience members to project themselves onto, which can be very boring when examining the character on its own, or you get a flawed protagonist who is meant to learn from their mistakes and symbolize the moral of the story, so to speak, which is often a much more interesting character to watch in my opinion, but can also serve as a source of conflict for the audience depending on what the flaw is. General audiences historically do not like it when the character is too flawed, which, you know, is kind of a shame because I think deeply flawed characters are more reflective of reality, but I do understand how that can stress some people out. Side characters, on the other hand, because of their limited screen time and roles as foils for the main characters, tend to be free of this conflict. When they are granted screen time, it's either often to drop a banger of a line, you know, for well-written shows and movies anyway, or if they are a flawed character, their limited screen time provides an air of mystique and allows audience members to write their own version of the side character's backstory, a version that the audience member can deem satisfying with respect to their flaws. You don't get that sort of grace with the main character when you already know so much about the main character. But sorry, I'm kind of getting deep into my analysis, and we're only talking about GER here. Every time you see Gur on screen, he's a character that you want to watch. Either because his costume alone looks cute, or because he's doing something funny and random, or if he's just delivering a banger line.
Cows are my friends. I don't like it.
And with respect to that last part, it's not necessarily because the writing is god tier or anything like that. I mean, Gur is often just spewing random bullshit. I think a lot of it is also credited to his voice actor, Ricky Simons. Gur would not be Gur if he didn't do the funny, cute squeals and screaming that he does. There are only two emotions that you can feel when seeing Gur on screen, and those emotions are joy and amusement. Unless you're old and bitter, in which you would probably feel annoyance. No bad vibes here. Does it get any more general audience than that? And the great thing about Gur's character is that he never really overstayed his welcome, in my opinion. When we saw Gur on screen, it was often because he was already interacting with another character and not the sole focus. And Jonan was also smart enough to not make any sort of Gur spin-off. Gur was established as solely a fun side character, and they never aspired to make him more than that. And that is what makes him perfect. It's that on-screen efficiency, so to speak. Second reason why Gur would stand the test of time is because his humor is timeless. Now, this point might confuse you a little, because I did say earlier how he reflected the LOL random humor of the 2000s. So how could I say that his humor is timeless? And well, that is because LOL random brain rot in itself is timeless. If you agree with this statement, your mind might be drifting to Skibbity Toilet. It's a comparison that many people online like to make, you know? Like, millennials clown on Gen Z and Gen Alpha for finding Skibbity Toilet funny, calling it brain rot and shit. And yet we had shit like Charlie the Unicorn and other YouTube poop that was essentially the brain rot of our time. And that's true. I agree with that. However, I'm about to make a comparison that I feel like might anger some people, but I think it's true and often goes unnoticed, so I'm going to say it anyway. But I believe that Gur is very similar to another symbol of brain rot that is popular amongst the Gen X population. And those brain rot characters are the Minions. Okay, now hold on. Everyone put down your tomatoes. Please stay with me. We all remember them, right? The Minions. Maybe sadly you can never forget them. The Minions, for whatever reason, got really popular with like Gen X wine moms. And they started making all sorts of relatable Minion memes. You know, like relatable within their own demographic. They're having fun, it's fine. And yes, I know, the Minions are another case of side characters getting their own spin-off movie, and that one also did not do so well, and people were getting burned out of Minions at that point. But let's just focus on their general popularity. Why did Gen X find Minions so funny and cling on to them like that? Well, if you think about it, Gur and the Minions are kind of really similar. They're both lackeys to evil masterminds. They both kind of just vibe out and hang out in the background, doing very relatable things. And they both make their own set of babbling, screechy noises. And let me tell ya, the general public really loves things that just scream. Need I direct you to Shoopy Doopy's Screaming Goat meme video? The only differences really are their respective settings. Gur is part of an edgier niche show, and the Minions are part of a more accessible movie franchise. In fact, I feel like the only reason why Gur is not popular with the Gen X demographic is because of the setting and time Invader Zim was released. If Gur weren't part of such a dark show, and if he made an on-screen appearance during a time when the general Gen X population were watching cartoons, I feel like he would also be popular amongst the Minion fandom. Like, if for whatever reason Illumination decided to make an Invader Zim crossover and included Gur in their Despicable Me franchise, I am almost certain that he would be almost as popular amongst the wine mom demographic as the Minions. They are brothers from other mothers. They are cut from the same cloth. They are part of the same cycle of simple entertainment that humans have loved from the dawn of time. Whether it's Skibbity Toilet or slapstick comedy or a court jester, humans will always love the little guy who makes a brief appearance to say or do something funny and then dip. Doesn't matter what subculture you're from, we're all still human, and our desire for mindless entertainment remains. Nevertheless, folks, those are the reasons why I think Gur is so iconic. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I don't know how outlandish that Minion comparison is, but I really stand by it because my boomer mother, who is kind of a Minion fan, though not as much as some Gen X moms, also found Gur funny when we watched Invader Zim together when I was a kid. I do think that the LOL random characters will always be the most popular character within a show or franchise, so long as the creator respects the balance of screen time efficiency. Anyway guys, that's all I gotta say on the matter. Let me know what you think if you disagree or agree with me. Let me know if you think that I actually cannot compare Gur and the Minions. And if I'm absolutely wrong, I would love to fight you in the comments. Leave a like if you liked the video. Thank you so much everyone for helping me reach 10,000 subscribers. And I'll catch you in my next one with my next very unimportant topic. Bye!